Hi, my name is Matt, and you've reached my channel, Everything Medieval. Today we're working on a new project. We are going to build a Viking chest. It's a 6-board chest, and so I've had a little bit of practice building these, but I've never built a Viking chest per se. What makes this one unique and also presents a few challenges is the fact that it has some angles. The sides come in at an angle and the top as well. And it also has a mortised line going around it, a groove where the bottom will fit in. So the whole thing fits together really nicely if it's done well. And we're going to be using a router. It's my first time using a router ever, actually. And so that's going to be a challenge in and of itself. You could actually make this chest with a saw, a hammer, and some chisels. You could do that if you wanted to, but it would be much more difficult. So we're going to use power tools and see how they do. So let's look at a few designs. So this is just a freehand drawing of what these pieces would look like typically. Now, what I'm using as a basis here would be a number of different chests. There's the Mästermyr chest and the Oseberg chest. And a number of other finds, and they all have these angled lines. When we're finished, this is going to be one sturdy chest. One of the things I sort of anticipated was, how are we going to make these joints work? On the left hand side you have joints that would be typical if you were just building a straight sided 6-board chest, but on the right hand side you have that angled leg or that angled side panel. And so the way that the bottom is going to stick into the mortise is going to be a little bit more complicated. Sort of worried that we might have this situation where it doesn't fit in well. And I might end up just using a wood planer and sort of carve that into a more rounded shape so that it doesn't have to perfectly fit into the mortise. We're going to be using a couple of different router bits, actually just two in particular. The one on the left, rabbiting bit, and then the one on the right is going to just be a straight router bit. One book I do have in my collection is Boxes and Chests by Allen and Gil Bridgewater, and it's been useful in the past when making 6-board chests. I might refer to it occasionally if I need additional help. Obviously this isn't exactly the same thing. I do have a few drawings here, a couple of sketches just to start with, to make sure I understand what this is supposed to look like. Even if you're not an artist, it's a nice idea to really sketch it out, see what it looks like so that you understand it intimately, because it's really important to understanding what you're making before you set to work on it. I'm cutting out the boards to match. I've got the top and the bottom. Okay, so now you've got your wood all cut into the pieces. We've got the two sides. The router is going to be next. It's, like I said, the first time I've used this before, and I'm doing this freehand. It might be useful to have a router table, but since I don't have one, we're just going to do it freehand. We'll see how this goes. Try to hold it as steady as possible. I've clamped the wood down, and I've actually measured this out before drawing this line, if you're wondering about that wood there. It's already been measured. And the next thing is just cutting that line. Make sure it is as straight as possible. It was a little bit wobbly. The thing that I found is, though, the board is going to be thick enough so that any imperfections are really hidden. But it seemed to work. And then when I unclamped it, I realized right away that there was something seriously wrong with it. So what was wrong with it? Two things, really. It went through the side and it would show, and I did a horrible job of measuring. It would have shown either way, because the bottom of the box is below the side and then the back flap. Way down there, it's off by like 3 inches from the bottom. I didn't count on totally screwing this up. This turned into a longer project because I had to start over. So while the two sides were totally messed up and have to be replaced, the front and the back seemed to be okay. But then there was another reason I kind of felt like I wanted to start over. And so I got this big piece of wood, and I figured that I could make the thing a lot longer, actually. Honestly, starting over is not a terrible proposition because you get to, redesign it. So I think the angle on the sides is a little steeper than a lot of the examples that I've seen. So what we're going to do is remeasure everything. We pretty much have everything ready to go here. In terms of like all the sides, make sure it's really clear what we're cutting. After completing new cutouts for the boards, a new bottom essentially, longer because it has to match the sides, and so I've got two new sides. I used the existing front and back to make two new sides, so essentially starting over from the beginning, and then trying to fit these pieces together. Each time I tried and realized that maybe a little bit more had to be removed with either the router or the scroll saw or a chisel, in fact. So it seemed like it's just a process of continuing to get these boards to fit well together, and that is a big job. It wasn't easy, and still not there just yet. So want to make sure that there are no gaps, and that's part of the point. We need a top. The lid is going to be a pine, just a plank of pine that's probably rounded a little bit on all four sides. And then I'm going to be hammering some hinges. So I have some experience building boxes a little bit like this 6-board chest. Made a few of those, as I mentioned earlier, but this one really did present some new challenges because of the way the bottom sits, and that there is a groove that goes all the way around, and the bottom sits in it. In addition to these little wings popping out here, it does have to sit in that groove all the way around, and I suppose you don't have to build it like that. You could simply maybe nail from the side through this side and have nail marks or peg marks to hold that in there. But this is actually the way that I've seen it done in some of the historical finds, the extant examples. So this is the way I wanted to make it, and like I said, it did present some challenges. I'm not a professional cabinet maker who would have a lot of experience doing this. So those shortfalls are sort of evident when you try a project like this. It really does challenge you and push you to do new things, try new methods, find out what would be the most appropriate way of doing that. And then even if it's your first time trying that, giving it a try and seeing how it turns out. Worst that can happen is that you waste some time, but I think it's time well spent nevertheless, just because you get the experience of doing this, and you give it your best shot, and ultimately you do have something at the end that hopefully will be able to function in some manner. So thank you very much for being with me here today, and if you like this video, please subscribe, like it, share comments below, and then definitely look for part 2, which should be just around the corner here. Thank you.